most important part of our event. I would like to hand over the proceedings to Master Sadesh Rajapaksha.
To both the teams, before we start proceedings, could both the teams send your speaker order on the chat, either to me personally or to the entirety of the chat? Thank you to both the teams for sending your speaker orders. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be starting the debate now. We'll be screenshotting the topic for the final now. The final reads, this House believes that states should reclaim a large proportion of all donations to charities and redistribute it across charities on the basis of their effectiveness. For this debate, Royal College Colombo will be going for opposition and Sujatha Vidyalaya and Nugegoda will be going opposition. To briefly mention the rules and regulations, the speeches will be 7 minutes long because this is a prep round. Protected time would be the first and the seventh minute, meaning that there would be one tap, one clap at 1 minute, one clap at 6 minutes, and two claps at 7 minutes to signal the end of time. Please note that all the speakers should have note that the specific speaker who is speaking should have their video turned on. With that said, the judges for the round will be Mr. Prashant Divisa, Mr. Lukman Hassan, and Mr. Tarin Rajpaksha. With the formality of the way, I hereby invite the first speaker of side proposition to state his case. Prop 1, I then meet.
Yeah, sorry. Am I visible and audible?
Yes, yeah.
Panel, think back to the most popular charity that you know. More likely than not, they do more to assuage your guilt in status quo than they do to help the people they're supposed to. We see that the donation level is at an extreme. It's at a record high. But there's a huge misallocation of this money within these large charities. We attempt to solve these problems, so proud to propose. First of all, before I move on to my arguments, a few points of framing and then my model. First of all, the amount of money that we reallocate from these charities will be based upon their quality or their quality adjusted life years, which is to say how much of an impact that they make on these people's life. Secondly, we will audit and force these charities to disclose their finances to the organization. We see that then they can be held accountable, but more on that later in my argument. Thirdly, then is that people giving their money towards these charities will now be redirected towards the same cause, but towards another charity with a better efficacy in that same cause. Then moving on to my model is that the state will appoint a third-party organization which will, depending on their quality adjusted life years, we will take amount of sum from them and we will reallocate this money towards a smaller but more efficient and charity which has more efficacy. The first argument then is on why we create a better incentive for these charities to act. First of all, salaries are large. Salaries are really large in these big charities. We see that they follow a rather corporate model when distributing these resources that they have been given. What this means then is that now you're paying a lot of your resources towards the board members and staff salaries rather than using those resources that you have to help the people that your cause is supposed to be supporting. We see that then the problem that you have is that when you have this misallocation of money, the board of directors get much more of a salary rather than helping those people. And secondly, you waste much more on ads than you're supposed to because you're not using that money on the people. We see that you might actually do like a tokenistic act towards a person once in like a month to show like the people that you're actually doing something. But we see that rather then actually building wells for poor people in a third world country, it will be much better off actually giving that money that you use to build those wells to those people, so they can use it in the way that they want, and solve the issues that they are having. For example, we see that there's a lot of issues with these corporate model. When we saw that the Red Cross needed to ask so many people up to the board of directors that they couldn't take action immediately, and this is a really big thing for some charities such as the Red Cross, because we see that they need to take action immediately, and they're not allowed to take action immediately because they follow this corporate model within this charity. What these smaller charities look like is them being more effective and having better principles to giving this money. What this means is that these small charities, they might not have flashy advertisements or like a nice website to look at, but what they do have is better principles. And what this is to say, for example, in the malaria prevention charity, we saw that they gave cheap mosquito nets which both save money and have been scientifically proved to lower the amount of bites that a person has when using these. We see that they are more effective because now they're using less money in these, and we see that they're helping much more people in this example. And we see that also finally that they will use this money much better, because now you create a better incentive for these larger charities. Why is that? First of all, you now have transparency in these charities. So now everybody can see their finances, so they can be held accountable. Secondly, is that their big funders will want their money to stay in that certain charity, and will want these board of directors to do better so that their money doesn't go out of their charity. Second argument then on why we create a better capacity for these charities to act. Understand this. Let me paint you a picture. We have a disaster situation happening somewhere. Let's say a volcano erupted, and the Red Cross needs to act to help all the injured people. What's better, leaving them there for a week and then helping them, or helping them when that disaster situation happens? Well, most likely you're going to say within that disaster system and situation. And we see that we give them a better capacity for them to act, because you actually now give them that valuable time that they should have, rather than having a corporate model and having this whole sort of thing. Secondly, we see that the Red Cross and so on aren't very effective for the amount of money being given. One thing we need to understand, that even though they have this amount of money, you cannot use this money effectively if you're given so much of it. We need to understand that even if a charity could use so much money, we need to understand that it's better giving it to other charities too, because now you have much more people to help you on one single cause, because you're much likely going to have these more people helping in that same cause. You're much likely going to solve problems faster, and you're going to help more people in the long run. Finally, we see that a charity working at one issue at a time is much less effective again than multiple charities working at multiple issues. And therefore, we see that we're helping much more people in the long term and short term. We're solving all the problems that they are in status quo. So proud to propose.
I thank the speaker for his speech. I hereby welcome the first speaker of side opposition to say it.
And I'm starting at 3, 2, and 1. Honorable Adjudicator. First of all, charities play a huge role in the society by being the only option for a group of people. The reason why these charities exist is because the capacity of the government is not enough to recognize and fulfill these problems that these people have. Where that's the case, the charities are higher in countries where there is an inefficient government And we oppose this motion because this motion is important for those people in those countries where the charities have become their only option to solve their problems. And moving on to give a response as to what side proposition board, they brought up this whole argument based on how this advertising has caused like minor charities a problem, right? But we see that this advertising is important because people donating money is not an easy task, right? They don't, people also earn money it's very hard for them to earn money as well. They go through circumstances. And then in an instance like where they advertise this money, we would have a large amount of money, right? But when in an instance where the government will have a large proportion of it, think of the situation where a celebrity comes and advertise on to save wells. No, sir. And not donate money to save wells, right? Then people would donate money, and then we will have a large amount. And if the government comes up here and take a large amount and we distribute it to like these small charities, now the celebrity won't come up here and like help these people to get this money back to all those to save wells, right? And then what will happen is, as a result, these people will lose interest in giving more money, and at the end, as a long-term run, what will happen is we will lose money. And so we would rather have more money than giving a small amount of money for those inefficient charities. And also, if side prop is speaking about quality adjusted life, it doesn't work. For an example, if there is a charity focused on polio cure, in side prop's model, it wouldn't rank on the list. This cut it off. And also they spoke on a third-party organization, right? This is not about a third-party organization, but a government who is having a large proportion of money from thousands of charities around the world. Okay, so for the House, we have three main arguments on how purpose-oriented donations, how this undermines democracy and value judgment. So I will be dealing with the first two arguments. Moving on to my first argument, purpose-oriented donations. On the first level, let me tell you how this undermines autonomy. And so people have a direct claim to their money, which they work hard and earn, right? They have a legitimate claim over their money. So if there's no third-party harm, they could spend the money they want in a way they want. If there's no third-party harm, there's no harm in that. And it's extremely unjust and unfair where the government step here and not allow people to spend their money, their hardworking money, the way they want, because through this, it undermines autonomy. And on the second level, if the inside propositions model, if it's a large proportion and a small proportion is given to people, to these charities, still think if a person donates a 1 lakh and if 85% is given taken by the government, then the amount of money that will go for these small charities is only 15,000. Then that person could have simply donated 15,000. This person donated 1 lakh because that person wants to improve that area in an effective manner. And this violates the right to choice, and exaggerating this more, there's a personal connection why a person will always donate money. If in a scenario where a father donates for a cancer charity because his son died from cancer, there is a personal connection, and that person donates this money to get personal satisfaction and to overcome grief. And this government coming and taking the satisfaction away from this person is extremely unfair, because in each and every other instance, people donate money because they have a personal satisfaction for reasons like satisfaction and happiness. And a monetary value cannot be assigned to such things. And also, it's extremely unfair and unjust to proceed with this. And we see that is very morally problematic and detrimental. And on the third level, when people are uncertain of where their donation goes, they are unwilling to give donations. Majority of people doesn't know about all charities other than the ones they are personally connected with. And if the person doesn't know where their money is going, this will decrease the donations we receive, and that will affect the whole process of charity. And moving on to my second argument on how this undermines democracy. If you allow the government, yes, sir. Seeing none.
The reason why people donate to charity is because the cause that is dear to them. So understand, ma'am, that won't they be more happy to donate just by the fact that they are going to donate to a more efficient cause?
people donate to their personal satisfaction, and they would donate more if they know where their money is going, because they donate to a place where they are personally linked with, and that will gain more satisfaction and happiness for the person. And moving on to my second argument, how it undermines democracy. If you allow the government to handle all these large proportions from thousands of charities, you are giving them an unsolicited power. And unlike charities, their incentive is to get re-elected, right? And so they can use this, use it for political affiliations, and this will allocate funds. They will allocate funds in their perspective, and that this classification is unlikely to be the best, because it's the government's decision, and their main incentive is to get re-elected, and this could lead to corruption. And the whole argument, the side proposition, what about mislocation of money, we think that would be rebutted through this argument. And on the other side, take a basic example, just like the government builds roads, and they basically build these roads by the taxpayers' money, right? But they get the credit as to I built this road, but what happens through this is the same thing would happen for this charity process, where they would basically use this money to the places they think it would be effective and use it as political affiliations. And this will result in clouding the information that people have to decide whether this person should be re-elected or not. And this is extremely unfair, and this undermines democracy, which is the whole purpose a government is assigned for. And because of all these problems that we have from the side propositions case, we think that the honorable adjudicator should side with side opposition. Thank you.
I thank the speaker for her speech. I hereby welcome the second speaker of side proposition to state his case.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you're right.
Good. Let's take some breast cancer charities in the United States. More than 35% of all their finances are not being shown to the public. They're stealing so much money. And we believe even in the worst case scenario, the state is far better and can efficiently reallocate these resources better than these charities that are not held accountable because of their privacy and all those other issues that are there within charities. Understand, if you take the Red Cross, the fact of the matter is, in disaster situations, for example, they got $500 million US dollars, but the fact was they were never held accountable to show the people what exactly they did with that money. The broad assumption and the most likely thing they did is they paid all the salaries of all their people and the board of directors because of the reason as to how these charities in status quo run. They run in a corporate model where the people at the top and all their workers are bureaucratic and gain the most amount of money. And there's a system and inherently harmful problem of reallocation. That is the problem that we identified. Opposition never failed to address this problem. That's why they lose their debate then and there. Two things in this speech. First, I'll be addressing two questions. A, as to whether we have a principal justification for the state to actually do this. And secondly, as to whether or not it's going to be helpful by having this system. And secondly, I'll be extending my own case for my third argument as to how we weed out the most ineffective charities and create a better society as a whole. Moving on to this first question on whether or not the state has ability and whether the state is corrupt and should not be able to use these resources. What exactly this proposition said, this came out really late in their speech, which this idea that, look, these states, the people within these states are going to be corrupt and whatever. The fact of the matter is, even if we are to accept but not concede that is really the case, the fact is we believe that people within these charities are far worse because they are not going to be held accountable at all because they are private citizens. On the comparative, why are people who are within the state far better? Few reasons. First, these individuals, just as proposition said, these are need to be re-elected. How are they going to be re-elected? By the people. Therefore, if they don't do their job properly, the people are not going to re-elect these people. Therefore, they're more likely to be held accountable by the people. Therefore, they're going to have to do their jobs to the best extent possible. Second reason, The reason is social media. Understanding status quo, social media has a huge amount of influence. Therefore, we understand that if an individual doesn't use the money to the greatest extent possible, if the people within the state don't do this, they're going to be scrutinized by social media. There's going to be a lot of hate for these people. Therefore, they're going to be held accountable. Finally, understand things like media existed in status quo. In the vast majority of cases, people, international media outlets, and even local media outlets hold these individuals accountable. Therefore, we believe the fact of the matter is these people are more likely to do something far more than these other individuals, because they are not going to be, because of their comparative, these people are not going to have to disclose their finances, which is a major issue we identified. And we showed you as why you need to disclose these finances and show to the people what exactly you do with these grand sums of money. Moving on to the second question, and this was the important question within this debate. First idea then is this idea that some charities are not going to be helping. They gave this example of things like polio vaccine. If you listen to a model panel, the fact of the matter is, if an individual is going to give to polio cures, that same money is going to be taken by this third party and being given to the most efficient polio cure charity. That was blatantly said in our model. I don't know why opposition failed to understand that. So therefore, we don't really believe this idea that some particular causes are not going to be getting money is really true. The fact of the matter is, what's going to happen is every single cause is going to get money, but the distinction is the most efficient charities within status quo are going to get that money. Therefore, you're not going to have very, very inefficient charities on their comparison. Moving on, then the second idea that whether or not these people have the ability, whether or not you need to have this certain amount of autonomy. We argue that the fact of the matter is, within status quo, the autonomy is being corrupted within their house as well. Why? Because we see that there are a large amount of coercion within individuals. That is to say, the reason as to why, if you name, if you ask opposition to name 10 charities that help in emergency situation, they won't be able to name. They'll only be able to name 2 or 3. The fact is, things like the Red Cross and the UNICEF. The fact of the matter is, the reason for this is because of things like a large amount of advertising that you misallocate the resources to things like advertising. If you take malaria control charities, for example, you see they are straight to work charities. They don't have this really nice website. They don't have these quotes or whatever. They go out and help the people. These kind of charities don't get the same amount of recognition because of the fact they don't have the same amount of advertising. The fact of the matter is, people within society are already coerced into paying to charities that are misallocating resources, because they misallocate the resources to increase their advertising. Therefore, what that trickles down to is their board of directors getting more money. Therefore, we don't really believe this idea of autonomy really exists on their side either. But even if that wasn't true, understand the fact of the matter is, even if that wasn't true, these people still give to the same causes. Why is that true? Because when you give money to this third party to reallocate them, you still give that money to the same causes, because the state is going to listen to these people. If this person says we want to give to suicide prevention, for example, you're going to take that money and give it to the most efficient suicide prevention charity. In that instance, the autonomy of these people is going to be far better, and the satisfaction of these people is going to be far better. Why? Because opposition themselves consider that how you get a certain amount of satisfaction is when you help that cause that's dear to you. On our side of the house, you're going to help that cause to a far greater extent, because you're going to give the charity with the most amount of efficiency. Therefore, these people are going to be far more likely to be far more satisfied on our side of the house. We need to address this before moving on. Understand as to why we believe the state does have the ability to actually keep these charities accountable. Because you see, in the vast majority of cases, the state gives things like subsidies to these charities, and they give so much benefits to these charities for them to run this way they run. That is the reason as to why we believe a reciprocal response needs to be there. And that is why we believe it's all right for the state to actually go out and keep these charities accountable for making sure that these people go out and show their numbers. They need to make sure that they give to the correct places and make sure to help the people that are most vulnerable. Moving on to my own argument as to how you weed out the worst charities. The fact of the matter is, now understand the worst charities are less likely to now be able to get any resources, because of the fact they're going to be restricted by the state, because the efficacy is going to be far less. On that comparative, understand what's going to happen is you're going to take that money and reallocate it as far more better charities and weed out those worst charities. And the people within these charities are going to have to disperse and have to do better jobs. Understanding that, because of the fact that opposition failed to recognize and address any of the issues that we gave you in Prop 1, we have showed you multiple layers as to why these charities are ineffective within society and why this reallocation is the most important way of carrying out their activities. You already side with proposition.
I thank the speaker for his speech. I hereby welcome the second speaker of side opposition to state a case.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Honorable adjudicator, first of all, let me start off some rebuttals. So the proposition first speaker comes up here and say that this is a huge misallocation of money. But let me tell you, people donate because they feel like it's a problem and that it needs to be solved. So therefore, what the government think is important isn't the same perspective that the people will look at. So it's actually not a huge misallocation of money. And secondly, the proposition first speaker and the second speaker come up and say that they will have these audits and they will these charities will be looked into. But first of all, let me tell you that we are going to mandate charities to release all of their financial accounts. So the transparency of these finance records will be the same as what the side proposition is proposing. And also, honorable adjudicator, they said that organizations like Red Cross won't be able to make instant decisions. But let me tell you that redistribution, as side proposition says, is not actually an easy process, that it would take a lot of time because the government has to look into all of these charities and they have to redistribute all of this money. So this is a big process, which is actually inefficient. So this would actually interfere with taking instant actions. And also, honorable adjudicator, they came up and said that board members would take money from the charities. It's obvious, sir, that because these people need to get paid to live their lives. So if you're going to take away the money from these charities, these board members won't be as much as likely to work because they literally have like no funding to their lives. So therefore, these charities would eventually dissolve. So that I believe, and also the proposition second speaker came up and said that like he didn't actually get the point that we said that we use the charity money like for the betterment of the people. But when the government gets involved, they would actually use that money in the incentive of getting re-elected. So like they would literally take the people's charity and then they would make it like do certain activities and they would like make do as their own. And also, honorable adjudicator, like they should like so the second speaker, sorry, the first speaker of the proposition come up and said that they should provide inefficient and efficient charities both. But the second speaker comes up and said that they will only provide these efficient charities, which is like they're contradicting themselves. And also the second contradiction that they're doing is that the first speaker comes up and said that big charities are inefficient, and the second speaker comes up and said that they will take these small charities money and give it to the big charities. So therefore contradicting themselves. And denied. And moving on to my argument, value judgment, which I'll be handling in 3 levels of analysis. So on the first level of analysis, which is why the centralized system won't work. So charities exist because there are certain issues that the government is supposed to fix. But since they fail to do these tasks, these charities step up to cater to the needs of the people. And by taking away a large portion of the donations, it would give the government an extra responsibility as well. And also, it won't be the government's best interest to give the best decisions, since this makes the government look bad because charities take over their responsibility. And furthermore, when charities improve, when the charities improve, it proves that charities do more effective work than the government. So therefore, the government won't be as much as interested to distribute the money. And moving on to my second level of analysis. Decrease of effectiveness. So, honorable adjudicator, there are about thousands of charities in each country. But as side provision comes up and say that they'll be ranking each of these charities according to the way of their effectiveness. But the downside of your whole system is that it's impractical, because you can't have private audits to each and every single one of these charities, and you can't like do subjective tests, and you can't come up with a conclusion that is fair for all. So what the government will do is that they will set up common objectives in order to measure their effectiveness. Like by doing this, you're actually forcing these charities to conform to what the government believes is what's effective, which might actually leave which might not be right, because they would be like stopping charities from thinking out of the box. They will be stopping these charities from being creative. They want handling a charity is not easy. They need to have their own freedom. So when we are going to allocate common objectives, what we are doing is we are going to take away the freedom of the charity. So, and also, Honorable Educator, my third level of analysis. So the downfall of certain charities. Honorable Educator, let us take, for example, there are specific charities catering to very small amount of people, but the people, those minority of the people, they needed to survive. So let's take, for an example, let's take Sri Lanka, like where the government is extremely homophobic, but there are LGBTQ people that needs funding to survive. So like in those kind of situations, like in your way of ranking these effectiveness, Honorable Educator side proposition would actually rank them at the bottom, which these like the government would not even look into those kind of charities because the government is against it. So, and also Honorable Educator, when we are taking Myanmar, the Rohingyans example, like when these refugees, they get funded, the government won't actually look into it because like the government doesn't actually accept these refugees. So therefore this would be unfair for all of these people. So this system actually has a fault. And also Honorable Educator, if we take for an example like the abortion charity, like in countries where there is extreme it's extremely religious, like these countries would actually like these charities do a lot of good for the society, but the government would actually rank them low. So therefore, we believe that it's very unfair for these kind of charities. As saying so, I conclude my speech.
I thank the speaker for her speech. I hereby welcome the third speaker as side proposition to state his case.
Can I be heard clearly?
Yes.
Okay. Starting in 3. Charities nowadays are one of the most important factors in the world because what we believe is they have helped change the lives of millions of people, and we believe in the current status quo. It is being misused. And in our side of the house, we plan to take this effectively. We plan to use the charities, use the money that was given to charities in the right purposes. We are so proud to propose. But my speech, firstly, I'll give a couple of points of response for moving on to 2 questions that I'll be answering in debate. Firstly, on which side actually benefits the minorities and people who are in need, who these charities actually focus on. Secondly, whether people will actually stop donating or whether they will keep donating in either house. Before this, moving on to a couple of points of clarification. Firstly, on how this is actually being distributed, because the mechanism of the debate, I believe, is extremely mischaracterized and is not understood by side opposition. Hence, they bring arguments that make no sense in our context. The under this is that we will be distributed the charities with equal proportion. What we believe here is that if you donate it to a place of, if you donate to a cancer charity, then we believe that we will take a large proportion of that and donate it to another cancer charity that has a much better streak of effectiveness. So just because, let's say a person wants to donate something to cancer, and we won't just take it away and give it to something like neurosurgery or tuberculosis. It will still go to cancer, but it will go to a charity that has a much better result. And that takes away the entire argument about people's interests and stuff, because they still go to the interests that the people want. Secondly, there'll be an organization to monitor these charities, and what we believe here is that they'll have a steady mandate where it's extremely unbiased. And just because the government does not like refugees does not mean that this organization will be against refugees, because they will be extremely unbiased. And thirdly, under this is that they will be judged according to their financial ability and according to a direct proportion. So just because the one's extremely rich and one's extremely poor, we will see what the effect they made according to the current financial stability, what the effectiveness they made with the current resources that they have. So all this rich, poor charity nonsense does not fall in our debate. Second clarification is on the issue of exploitation and what we believe that our side actually takes away this problem. Firstly, what we believe is that in our side we prove to you about how it's actually transparent, because these charities have to share their details with the organization, telling, oh, look, we got this much money and we're using this to help this. Therefore, it makes Y results. So then what we believe is it's extremely easier to track illegal activities like money laundering, exploitation, etc., etc. Because the reason we believe why this is imperative to prevent this is because firstly, this money can be used towards something much more important, and secondly, that this money are the hardworking money of thousands of people. And when these charities, in majority of cases, do misuse them, we're just taking away the happiness of another million people. Moving on to a couple of points of rebuttals. On this, they came on this basis that we can't actually make any charities better. What we believe that we can't actually tell these charities better than Wonder. What we believe that yes, we can, because we believe that charity that does more work, charity that has a better outcome is definitely a better charity. Secondly, there's this clash on advertising, etc. What we believe is that advertising is important, but not the amount that they're using right now, because what we believe is they're using an unnecessary amount, and an amount that can be used for something better, where we can directly help someone's lives and affect them in a much more positive manner. And secondly, on this is that when we gave an example about advertisement, what we believe, what we showed here is that this money is being used for unnecessary things. So it's not just on this argument on advertisement. What we're saying is that this money can be used for something much more beneficial, such as counteracting this advertisement argument. We have no actual effect in our case. What I understand is the fact that these people will more likely focus on advertisements rather than finances. Because what we believe in our house, the mandate will actually have much more beneficial outcomes. Because in most instances, charities do focus on advertisements, no more people come to them, and in context, ignoring their main objectives. And they claim to be a contradiction. What we believe is that what we meant by small charities, charities that have little outcome, has little effectiveness. So we believe that there was no such contradiction. We don't understand how side opposition took in the context. Now, moving to my question, which side actually benefits these minority people and people in need. Firstly, on several charities, even though getting millions and millions of rupees, they have extremely minute impact because of 3 reasons. Firstly, exploitation and money laundering. Secondly, ineffective of these methods. And thirdly, not focusing on the primary crux of the primary issues and just focusing on something that will not actually help us. In our side of the house, none of these problems exist. Firstly, we explain to you how due to transparency, there will be no such exploitation. Secondly, that these charities will be using a much more effective methods with little money. So if we give them much more money, they'll have much more effective results. And thirdly, how it will be extremely hard. Then thirdly, we explain to you about how this money would go to something, to a right factor, because this actually solves the current problems. And what we believe is that these charities will be much more beneficial in these disaster managements, because what we believe is these charities are the charities that are good at fast, immediate responses. These are charities that give immediate results. And when it comes to disaster management, these charities who launder on the way and go in this void where they helped 1 or 2 people on the way will not actually have any beneficial outcomes. And then what we see is that they will work more harder to actually get this money, because they know that if they have a beneficial outcome, they will only be able to get more donations to them, because they know that if they have a more effective outcome, then they'll be able to get more money from the government after taking the direct proportion. So they'll work much harder to find much more effective methods. Secondly, on whether these people no longer did it. Firstly, what we understand is the reason charities are there in the world is not to compete with other charities. The primary focus of this is so that they'll have to help the world and help the millions of people who are suffering right now. And we believe that is why we win. Because side opposite complete base is one charity tries to have more than the other charity, so they have more beneficial results. The end results should be where a homeless person in Syria gets a home, where someone starving gets some food, where a person with cancer gets cured. And people, we believe, do this because A, they want to feel good, or B, they want to help a set amount of people. In both instances, they don't actually care who actually gives the money, as long as it has a beneficial outcome. And what we believe is just because we actually take and distribute the money, no one will stop donating, because they still want to help some people, because they still want to feel good, and they'll still do it. And we believe that we counted both of the reasons why people do it, and that's why we believe that we win. The people who donate this are people who actually, and when we tell you that people who actually donate this know where the money is going. Because as they said, people donate when they know where the money is going. But in our instances, they have more transparency. And even if we don't have any transparency, even in their sector, there is not much transparency. And in our side, we won't just take the money and be like, all right, you can leave. We tell them where the money is, And since we proved you why it helps more minorities, since we proved you why it's unnecessary to actually go into side opposition's context, we have won this debate. This motion passes.
I thank the speaker for his speech. I hereby welcome the third speaker side opposition to state a case.
Yes, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
All right, we starting in 3, 2, 1. Honorable adjudicator, we as side opposition believe that we have won this debate for so many reasons, and I'll be pointing them out clearly in my speech. So first of all, taking as to how side proposition has completely ignored our solution as to charity transparency. So first of all, they come up and say that as to transparency would not exist in a charity, and there would rather be more transparency in a government. But first of all, notice how they completely ignored our solution as to how we will be robustly regulating these charities, and we would mandate charities to release financial records to respond to freedom of information requests. So basically, since they ignored that part out completely, we believe we have already won this debate, since they did not debate on the terms as we said. So one major clash for this house as to why efficiency does not exist in their side of the house. So first of all, side proposition believes that when you take this money from specific charities and you relocate them, they believe it will create competition, and the charities will be more efficient, the charities will be more motivated to be more efficient, and that they will be incentivizing more spending. No, thank you. So first of all, as on our side of the house, we told you as to how these charities would lose donations. First of all, because there are reasons as to we clearly pointed out in our purpose-oriented donations. We showed you as to how these people only donate to charities they have a specific link to, that they have a personal connection to. And so, as they say that these donors would be more satisfied on their house-to-house because, as they say, that their side of the house would be more efficient. First of all, the efficiency does not exist, and I'll be pointing it out more. And second of all, we believe that the donors are satisfied if they actually knew where the donations were going. And as we told you, these charities would only lose donations if if the government steps in and takes this motion forward. Because as we kept showing you, the very reason these donors donate is because there is a specific connection to them. Second level. So they believe that these niche charities won't get funded because they won't advertise. So first of all, these charities will have the ability to advertise because they will also be receiving funds in our system. But on a more important level, we believe that side proposition's model is inherently problematic because, as you pointed out in a speech, as you pointed out in a second speaker's speech, we showed you as to why this value judgment as to which charity will be more effective than the other. We showed you as inherently more problematic. So for an example, let's take an LGBTQ charity in Somalia, where the government openly discriminates such charities. So in a situation like that, charities like this will completely be cut off, and we did not see a reply to this argument brought out by us. And so, because of the government openly discriminating such charities, because the government itself not wanting these charities, we showed you as to why these charities, which cater to only a small amount of people, but no matter how small that amount is, those people are also important. We see as to how these charities will be cut off, and that is what we see more inherently problematic, rather than this model side proposition from keeps telling us as to how these niche charities won't get funded. But then again, that would not exist, because even these niche charities, they get a specific amount of funding from at least the community around them. But whereas inside side proposition's model, these charities will completely get cut out by the list because the government believes that they don't support something right. As we showed you as to have an abortion charity in a very Catholic state such as Philippines, where these charities will be completely cut off. We believe that is more problematic than what side proposition is proposing. And second of all, moving on to efficiency. Now, the efficacy of funds allocation and as to how these funds will be used more. So, first of all, this is assuming that the government is 100% transparent. Secondly, it is also assuming that the government can allocate these funds properly and that the government can handle it. So, first of all, we showed you as to how the government's decision might not be what the donor's interest is. The government's best interest is not the donor's best interest. So, due to that, even taking side proposition in their very best case, in their very best scenario, we believe they have still failed because, as a point I pointed out earlier, whereas the value judgment, whereas governments will simply cut off charities they believe that doesn't support the right cause. First of all, that. And then again, secondly, the reason some charities get a lot of money, the reason they get a lot of donations is first, because they have been efficient in the past. So people won't simply go donate to a charity that isn't doing something right. We believe that side proposition's argument about as to how these huge charities are insanely corrupt and these people aren't allocating the money properly, that they aren't doing actual work. So first of all, the only reason they gain a lot of donations, first of all, is because they have been efficient in the past. And second of all, is because they do a substantial level of advertising. So then side proposition might come up and say that the very reason they get money is because of advertising. But no, so people simply won't donate just because the charity advertises. The charity has to prove as to they have done work, as to they are actually using these funds efficiently for a person to donate. So we believe that side proposition cares about as to how this how people just donate because charities advertise. And we believe that their case fails on that side. So, and then again,
before moving on,
thank you. So first of all, then again, now if you say handling a charity is quite challenging, no need to lie. So if charities are inefficient, as we said before, people won't donate, and thus these inefficient charities will automatically get cut off simply because they haven't done any work, and simply because they don't advertise too much, or simply because they have nothing to show to as they have done. So
at least one more.
So side proposition's argument about as to how inefficient charities exist and how they will be using money, we believe that doesn't exist. So on another level, charity corruption versus government corruption. So first of all, we told you as to how unlikely a charity is it will be corrupted, because to gain donations, they have to actually point out as to what they have done. So in an instant, in a very rare instant of a charity being corrupt, first of all, they are easier to hold accountable than the entire state. Because first of all, and even if you find a charity to be corrupt, it is far easier to remove the specific charity. If you find a charity to be ineffective, what you do is if you find it to be corrupt, you basically stop funding it. But when it comes to the government, if the government is being corrupt, and since the government has no incentive, doesn't have a necessary incentive to help these charities, as we showed you as to how these government officials will brand these donations as their own, whereas corruption is more likely to exist on side proposition's world. It is very harder to hold the government accountable due to these election cycles where you can't necessarily get rid of an entire government just because they are not allocating this money properly. So on a second level, they come up and say about quality adjusted life. And as we showed you as to how inherently that is also very problematic in our value justice argument. So we also showed you as to how by telling charities shouldn't advertise and whatnot, we showed you as to how they are forcing charities to conform to what the governments believe is right and taking away the specific needs of a charity that they need to be effective. So we believe that we have dealt with all the cases, all arguments brought out by side proposition, and since they haven't replied to arguments properly, we urge the honorable adjudicator to side with side opposition. Thank you.
I thank the speaker for her speech. I hereby welcome the reply speaker of side opposition to state the case.
3, 2, 1. Honorable adjudicator, the case of side proposition was a donut which was sugary on top, but there was a huge hole in between. Because the side of proposition fails to give a proper response to the case of side opposition, and since they completely ignored on all the arguments that we brought about, how this is going to be a huge problem, they completely ignored all the arguments on how charities and government contradicts and how corruption would happen within the government. Because the side proposition is thinking of a government where there could be no corruption at all, and whereas the side proposition didn't necessarily prove us as to how there is no corruption going to happen. And the one point they were harping about is how this is going to be efficient, whereas we have completely given a proper response as to how it's not going to work, whereas they have completely ignored on all the responses that we were giving to this house. And also they were basically stating on how they are going to decide this on efficiency, and whereas we prove on this efficiency is not going to work, because efficiency is a very subjective matter, and what the government thinks efficient won't be what the people think it would be efficient. And the side proposition kept contradicting themselves throughout the speech, saying that what the first speaker saying that they are going to support all the efficient charities, and where the second speaker was proving on how they are going to support all these inefficient charities. And we stated you we stayed at the house as two main arguments on why efficiency does not exist in their house and how advertisement is important, where we did not receive a proper reply from them, and they totally ignored our solution on charity transparency, and we never saw a proper flashpoint or rebuttals from the side proposition. And the current system, and due to these reasons, we believe, due to the reasons that we as side opposition stayed at the house, we believe that the current system is very efficient, because we explained you on how it could happen in their very best case scenario, but we clearly stayed at the house as how this is not gonna work. And also, as a rebuttal to the effectiveness about this whole board member case, we clearly stated at the house that board members join charities in order to get paid, but when the prop takes it away, the board members are going to leave and all these charities are not going to function, and how this is going to result in a society where that basically no charities would exist, and where we as side opposition clearly stated at the house as to how we are speaking on countries where the governments are very inefficient, and where these people are dealing with several problems, and how these charities have become their only option to get away with these problems. And if we clearly stated the house if we pass this case, how this is going to be very problematic, and how this is going to cause these people a greater harm. And since we stayed at the house under three main arguments: the purpose-oriented donations, how this undermines democracy, and the issues regarding value judgment. And since we did not receive a proper reply from the side proposition, and since we gave a proper reply to all the cases stated by the side opposition, we asked the honorable adjudicator to side with side opposition.
I thank the speaker for her speech. I hereby welcome the reply speaker of side proposition to state his case.
Am I audible?
Yes, yeah.
It's rather unfortunate that the best point opposition brought forward was in their op 3, and yet it was responded to in our prop 1 itself, when we said as to why the charities with the most amount of funding are actually corrupt. Understand the reason as to why we said this. We told you this in prop 1, and this is their best point in their whole argumentation, was these charities use tokenistic activities and ineffective activities. We gave you the example of wells. We showed you they use these tokenistic activities to show the public, oh, look, we are doing something good, and force and coerce these individuals into giving them money. That is the kind of narrative we gave you throughout all three of our speeches, yet proposition failed to address them, and then they brought this direct argumentation which was in contention with all of that matter. I don't know why proposition really brought something like that. When you understand the reason why this debate is even happening is because there's a certain amount of problem in their case, yet I quote opposition when they say, oh, look, charities right now are effective, yet they bring a counter situation themselves. They themselves concede they aren't effective. There's a large amount of contention within opposition's case. They lose the debate then and there. Moving on to a few questions, and this is the reason as to why opposition lost this, because they failed to understand the large amount of matter that we brought forth. First of all, we told you as to why a government and charity, the reason as to why a charity is less likely to be anything better than a government is because of the large amount of metrics the government is going to be held accountable for. I gave you in my second argument 3 metrics, and yet proposition failed to respond to any of these metrics. Therefore, I don't really believe why exactly these charities are going to be far better. We told you things like media, the social media, and why these people need to be re-elected. Therefore, they're going to do better. These are the metrics that we gave you as to why the government is going to be far better. The second thing then was this idea that, look, the government is going to not help certain amount of charity. Again, we don't understand how they can run this kind of argument. We told you blatantly how our model is going to work. If you give money to certain charities, you're going to take that money and give it to the same cause, but the most effective cause. So if you're going to say, look, the certain charities are not going to be paid, we don't understand how that's going to work, because you're going to give it to the best cause of that best charity of that particular cause. They never really showed to us as to how that kind of mechanism works. They were debating on debating on an assertion that this kind of model didn't exist. We don't really understand why that exactly was. Moving on, then this idea again as to why the government has the ability to do so. We told you as to why the government has to have a reciprocal response. So all the ability, all the things that they gave to these charities, we told you why the charities are given a large amount of subsidy. Therefore, the government needs to have this reciprocal response. The large amount of matter that we gave you throughout Prop 1 and Prop 2 that opposition failed to address, and that was one of the major reasons to why they lose this debate. Then finally on Op 3, they brought this counter narrative, and I don't understand why, if this counter narrative of theirs was so important, why they didn't bring it in Op 1. They brought it in the last bit of Op 2, and then they only made it in Op 3. The fact of the matter is, the reason as to why their system really doesn't work, as to why just disclosing finances isn't enough, is because just because you disclose finances, it doesn't mean all that advertising that coerces you is going to disappear. In the vast majority, people are just randomly going to look at the finances of a certain corporation. What they're going to do is go to their website and look at their website and look at all their tokenistic activity. That's why they're going to be coerced. So even if you are going to disclose anything, it's not really going to be effective. On our comparative, the distinction is after you disclose all the financials, you're going to hold these charities accountable. You're going to force them to give their resources and make sure to give the resources to the most effective charities. That is the distinction that opposition failed to address, and that is why they lose this debate, because their system in itself is inherently flawed, and in a realistic situation, their system isn't going to work. At the end of the day, why do we win this debate? Is because there are a large amount of details, a large amount of matter in Prop 1 that they failed to address. And these are matter that show to us why this system right now is harmful, and why this debate is even being debated in a third world country. We showed you, because of all these reasons, you already side with proposition.
That concludes the proceedings for the debate. I thank all the speakers for a wonderful debate. We will now be moving the three adjudicators into breakout room to decide on the verdict and the adjudication. Please to bear with us in the meantime.
Sadesh, shall I start the general feedback?
Yeah, or when we're ready, you can start the feedback.
Okay. First of all, let me start by thanking both teams for a very entertaining debate. It was also a very stimulating debate, because you guys had a very large number of points, a lot of different viewpoints, a lot of examples. And on top of all of that, you guys also tended to, elaborate quite a bit on all of those in a way that kind of brought the debate alive, which I appreciate, because in terms of debate, it's very easy to simply talk about the same point again and again. So having different points, bringing out how those points relate to each other, that's very rare in a debate. And so myself, as well as the other three debating judges, all appreciate that, right? Now, before we announce the verdict, I'm allowed to give some general feedback. There will be, if you guys want, I can give some, myself as well as the other judges will be giving some personal feedback after this. But in terms of the general feedback, I felt that while both sides had very good arguments, they seem to go more or less in parallel paths, because you acknowledged the other side's argument, but didn't really answer any of their main points. And the fact is that both sides had very good points, of which some of them completely went ignored by both sides as well, both in terms of elaboration as well as in terms of rebutting, which we found concerning somewhat. We felt the debate derailed later on, and it kind of tended to miss the point to some extent, though we felt that, with the last few speeches, it did come back full circle, and you guys did address some of the issues. Particularly with opposition, I believe that opposition did not ask enough POIs. In fact, they did not ask any POIs at all, while they also did not answer adequate POIs. They answered the grand total of 1, and I believe that was only taken by the first speaker of the opposition. Both the second speaker of the opposition and the third did not actually take any POIs. In that same sense, I believe that proposition, they were not asked any POIs, hence I could not judge them on that regard. But I felt that they were asking quite a few POIs, and we were not really sure whether some of the POIs existed simply to break up the tone and the rhythm of the opposition speakers, or whether it was in fact actual questions, right? And though if it was the former, I believe that in that sense it did work according to plan and was quite effective. In the overall sense, it was a very interesting debate, and the decision was split. It was a very difficult one to make, but congratulations to both sides in reaching this far in this competition, as well as for debating so hard to actually try and win this. So thank you to both sides.
Do any of the judges want to add in to that?
Sadesh, did you want more feedback, or are we moving on?
So if you have any more feedback to give to the debaters, or all is good, the floor is open.
Sure. Just to add, once again, congratulations to both teams. I think you guys represented your teams well. You represented your argument consistently, and you were trying to respond to points brought by the other. But a quick 2 points that I'd like to add to what Lukman mentioned was the proposition could have done more in building out your model, because you're trying to explain and create a new model. And I think at the early stages, if you flesh that out more effectively, I think you would have had a stronger argument throughout the debate. But at the same time, for the opposition, I think when you were trying to show flaws in a model that's led by the state, you were eager to move on from one point to the other. There are times where you could have leaned into your argument a little bit more to really nail it down and hammer the proposition down. Just as you were getting stronger there, you let go and you jumped on to the other point. So even though you try to share many points, I think you could have done a better job at fleshing out your opposition in a more poignant way. But regardless, I felt it was a very good debate, and congratulations to both teams. Well thought out. And so I am looking forward for you to hear the final result eventually.
Do any of the judges have any more feedback?
No, it's fine.
All right. Since the feedback is over, thank you to all the judges for making time. I now hand over proceedings to President.
Sorry for the delay. Thank you, Sadesh. Next, I cordially invite Mr. Prashant Divisar, the founder and president of Sri Lanka Unites. Mr. Prashant Divisar launched the movement in 2009, and since then, Sri Lanka Unites has grown to a 20,000 community of 12 to 30 years old, hailing from different ethnic and religious backgrounds, active in all 25 districts. Mr. Prashant Divisar, over to you, sir.
Thank you to the Trinity College Sri Lanka Unites chapter. It's an absolute joy and a privilege to join you on this virtual event. I've had the privilege of being at Trinity College many times over the years, especially over the last decade. And Trinity has been a proud Sri Lanka Unites chapter for many years. In fact, it may have been one of the very first chapters, and has definitely been one of the most active school chapters we've had. And just want to congratulate yet another generation of Sri Lanka Unites committee members for coming up with innovative initiatives, but also showing your compassion and your commitment to charities and investing in so many charities across the country over the years through all the projects that you've done. It shows how you've come together as young men from different ethnicities and religions, come together as a school at Trinity, but then also come together with young men and women across the country to do good and to show the true spirit of what we believe Sri Lanka can be, a united and diverse and powerful nation that is concerned of not just about our selfish intentions, our selfish ambitions, but have a deep passion and a commitment for all the people of our nation. So thank you. I want to make a special note to the master in charge of the Trinity College Sri Lanka Unites chapter, Mr. Shane De Silva. You have been a pillar of strength to the movement, of not just for Trinity College, but the entire movement in your service on the board for Sri Lanka Unites as well. I also want to thank the students, debaters from Royal College and Sujatha Vidyalaya for an incredible performance. Not just congratulations on making it to the final, but excelling in your performance at the final. This topic that you were discussing is a very crucial topic because it very well might be a conversation even here in Sri Lanka, where there are conversations where the state may want to be responsible to hold on to resources for charities. And so there's arguments for and against. And so it's a very poignant discussion. It's a very crucial discussion. And so I think you added a lot of insight on both sides of the argument, and that was very well done. At the same time, I believe as a nation, we need a young generation like you who is able to look at issues intelligently, debate your perspective, not just as an exercise, but in a way to persuade each other in making more refined decisions of the country. For too long, we have made decisions emotionally. We have made decisions along party lines, along ethnic lines, along religious lines, and we have betrayed the opportunity of making good, intelligent, win-win decisions that could have transformed our nation. So hopefully, and our hope and prayer is that your generation is a generation that can think intelligently, think with a vision and clarity, and make crucial decisions for our nation. That you would be a generation that says no to violence, to extremism, to discriminating others or any sort of prejudice. But you'll be a generation that decides to listen, understand, think, contemplate, persuade, journey together, and accomplish great things. That we as a nation, when you're adults, will no longer be a developing nation, no longer be a nation struggling with corruption or struggling with so many social issues, but we'll be a nation that has overcome many challenges and become a model to the world. And I know that's a long way away, but with people like yourselves who have a heart and a desire to serve, a desire to pursue truth, to express your passion, and then to put in the work day in and day out to accomplish your desires and your dreams to become a reality, I believe the best is yet to come. So thank you. And thank you once again, Trinity College. As I was just reflecting today at your chapter, you have done projects from cancer institutes to helping kids in rural communities have transport to schools, helping create IT labs, a whole gamut of things that shows how passionate you are and how in touch you are with the various issues of our country. And you're not using the excuse of the fact that you're still young and you're still in school and you don't really have an income per se. You're not using those excuses, but you're responding to social issues in our country right now. So you are an incredible example of people who walk the talk. And I hope that adults will be inspired by you, your peers will be inspired by you, the world will be inspired by you. Thank you.
We as the youngsters of this multicultural country are truly inspired by you, sir. Thank you for those words of wisdom. Last but not least, the Best Speaker Award of this event goes to Master Sujit Tissera of Royal College, Colombo. Congratulations, Master Sujit Tissera. Now for the verdict. By a 2-1 split, the motion fails. Congratulations to Sujatha Vidyalaya for being the winners of tonight's event. This means the runners-up of this event is Royal College, Colombo. Congratulations to Royal College, Colombo for a great performance. Next, I would like to invite the Vice President of the Sri Lanka Unites chapter of Trinity College, Kandy, Master Umair Raizan, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Principal of Trinity College, Kandy, Reverend Father Arlia Jayasundara, Mr. Prashant Divisa, the founder president of Sri Lanka Unites, the Vice Principal of TCK, Mr. Krishanta Anthony Das, the Co-Vice Principal of Trinity College, Mr. Anand Mahasinha, the teachers in charge, Mrs. Manga Bandara and Mrs. Shani Palihavadana, the staff advisor, Mr. Shane Silva, the judges, and all the debaters. First of all, we would like to thank the principal of Trinity College, Kandy, for taking time to speak today and for supporting us in this endeavor. We also would like to thank Mr. Prashant Divisar, the founder, president of Sri Lanka Unites, for providing us with such valuable thoughts. Next, we would like to thank the teachers in charge for guiding us and backing us up with fullest support in setting up the required necessities. We also would like to thank the co-vice principal, Mr. Krishanthan Antonidas. The vice principal of Trinity College, Mr. Krishanthan Antonidas, and the co-vice principal, Mr. Ananda Mahasinghe, for arranging the necessary facilities which created the backbone in carrying out the initial stages of this program. Also, for taking time to join for today's session. Next, we would like to thank all the judges who took part in all the rounds of the debates and also for sparing time to take part amidst the busy schedule. We also would like to thank the Indira Cancer Trust for providing us with the opportunity to help you all with this brilliant cause. Most importantly, we would like to thank all the debaters for participating in our event and contributing in this valuable cause. Last but not least, I would like to thank my fellow committee members in providing the utmost contribution and support in making this initiative a success. Finally, I would also like to thank our sponsors, all the sponsors, Nico Battery, Commercial Bank, John Keel's Group, Al Hakim Enterprises, and also we would also like to apologize and thank everyone who was not mentioned above. I would now like to make a humble request to Mr. Prashant Divisar to organize a much awaited Future Leaders Conference for 2021, which would bring us the opportunity in meeting our brothers and sisters from around Sri Lanka. Thank you.
Thank you, Umair. That concludes the end of VERBALIZE 2020. Please note that the certificates and consolation prizes will be posted to the schools. On that note, have a good night.